So, funny story, you see this kind of quite large selection of books behind me? Well, I kind of tripped and fell and I accidentally bought 30 more books. So, I have a problem. Actually, I do have a kind of valid reason / excuse, and that is because, firstly, it's hot book summer. Science has probably confirmed this. Reading makes you sexy. And secondly, here in the UK, it is Independent Bookshops Week, and so I thought I would go out with my wish list of books and just buy all of them and support some hardworking booksellers while I did it. So there you go. There's my poor financial decisions justified. So today I am absolutely buzzing my tits off because I'm going to be sharing all of the books that I bought and hopefully helping you find your next summer read. But quickly, before we dive into that, I'm so excited to let you know that today's video is brought to you by OnePlus. Because you know who else is having a hot summer? The OnePlus Nord CE. This is a new smartphone and OnePlus have sent it to me to try out. Oh my goodness, this is the most satisfying thing ever. And actually, I can get using this very quickly because these phones can charge from 0 to 70% battery in 30 minutes. 30 minutes! I'll be like one chapter into the first book in that time. That's insane, and very snazzy too. There's 3 cameras on the back so you can capture all of your summer memories. It also has a smooth screen which makes it perfect for photo and video editing, which, you know, I dabble in. And also, oh, what's that? No, I'm not doing anything. You can win a OnePlus Nord CE of your very own by looking in the description box down below. Best news I've heard all week. OnePlus is a brand who are fun and cutting edge, and they care about creating affordable smartphones which still have unparalleled features, which is super, and so I'm very, very grateful to them for sponsoring today's video. So thank you, OnePlus, and good luck to everyone entering the competition down below. And now let's get on to talking about some books. The first one I wanted to talk about is this one, which is called No One Is Talking About This. And I'm going to. What I know about this is that it's a book about social media written by someone who actually uses it. Because a lot of fiction that's written about social media is very violently anti-social media. And I think this is written by someone who actually has a genuine fondness and appreciation for social media and isn't expecting it to ever go away. And as a result, I've heard this is a really interesting book. And so as someone who is quite an avid social media user, like if there's a social network, I'm on it, I am pumped to read this. So it's simultaneously a love letter to the infinite scroll of social media and a meditation on love, language, and human connection from one of the most original voices of our time, Patricia Lockwood, and this is nominated for the Women's Prize this year. Now, the next book is this one. This is called Rodham. Now, one of my favorite independent bookstores actually hosts their own book club, and it's so great, and so this is this month's book pick. Now, this is Hillary Rodham, and you may be thinking, I don't know who that is, but actually you definitely do, because Hillary Rodham would eventually marry Bill Clinton and become Hillary Clinton. This book imagines what life would have been like for Hillary if that had never happened and she said no to Bill Clinton in the first instance. So it's all about the different trajectory that her life could have taken, and I'm very intrigued to read this. Also, love this, there's some bonus content in this book, so the author has also included a short story that he's written, which kind of makes me think of a Disney Pixar film, you know how they have like a mini animation before the main film. I'm looking forward to that. Speaking of things I'm looking forward to, you have probably seen this absolutely everywhere, and this is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. This was the winner of the Women's Prize last year, and this is set in Stratford-upon-Avon in 1596, and it imagines the life and death of Shakespeare's son Hamnet. I've heard that it's this really awesome story about Shakespeare's family, so his kids and his wife, who he kind of deserted and moved off to London to be a playwright, and the characters are really fascinating, but it never actually mentions Shakespeare by name, and that's because, for once, it's not about him, it's about these guys who got left behind, and I've heard it kind of features a deep dive into the process of grief, and so I'm ready for this to rip my heart into tiny pieces, and I'll enjoy every second of it. So Hamnet, another huge award winner from last year now, this is Shuggie Bain. This won the Man Booker Prize in 2020, and it's all about a working class family in Glasgow and Shuggie Bain, whose mother is an alcoholic. And the reason I picked this up is because I listened to a really fascinating conversation about it on BBC's Between the Covers. It's like a book club TV show. And what they were saying is how in this particular story, poverty and alcoholism and addiction were so closely intertwined and made more complicated. And they were kind of saying it depicts a flawed human, but also with joyous moments, and I'm really intrigued to see the complexity of that. I feel like this is going to be a masterclass in writing and character creation, and so I am desperate to read it. And so it's on the pile. Do you know what else is on the pile? This book, this is The Other Black Girl. This is a very new release, and it's all about race and the publishing industry. So it's described as a smart satire on race and the modern day workplace that will keep you guessing until the very last twist. And it's about 2 black women working for the same publishing house. As you can kind of tell from the imagery of the cover, I've heard there's this fascinating conversation about black hair, quite akin to Americana by Adichie, which is one of my favorite books of all time. One of those books that as soon as I heard what it was about, I needed it in my life, and Here she is. By the way, this pile over here is gonna just get increasingly chaotic. I hope that's okay. Okay, next set of books. This one is called Loveless. This is by Alice Oseman. I absolutely needed to read this because Alice Oseman actually went to Durham University, the same as me. I think she graduated the year before I got there. And this book is set there. I cannot wait to see my university that I went to depicted in fiction. It's about a girl called Georgia who moves to university and she's never been in love, she's never kissed anyone, and she's never even had a crush. And this is where she uncovers some new terms, which are asexual and aromantic. And I've never seen asexuality represented in literature before. So I think this is gonna be awesome. I listened to Alice Oseman speak about it at Hay Festival. I was also very, very lucky to be invited to speak at that event. Imagine silly little me on the same lineup as Alice Oseman. But what Alice was saying is that this is also a book about friendship and how you can have genuine love in your heart for your friends. And hearing her say that was something I could completely relate to, because I do think that sometimes the intensity of your friendship relationships is just as strong as your romantic ones. So this for me is a must read, and not just because I'm not yet over the fact that I have actually graduated from this university. I cannot wait. The next book is called Memorial, and this is by Brian Washington. Firstly, big fan of the minimal cover. Secondly, Ocean Vuong is quoted on the top of this, and if he approves, I approve. And it sounds so fascinating. So basically it's about these two guys who have been in a relationship for a while, but they're kind of at this weird breaking point in their relationship where I think they're starting to fall a bit out of love. Anyways, one of them finds out that their father is dying, and so he flies back to his homeland of Japan. He leaves just as his mother, who is separated from his dad, arrives to visit them. So this book is about how this guy's mum and his boyfriend basically become like unconventional flatmates for a bit in an absurd domestic situation that ends up meaning more to each of them than they ever could have predicted. I want to read it right this moment. It's about becoming who you're supposed to be, the outer limits of love and family in all its strange forms. I might cut the cameras, I'm reading this now. Anyways, next book is this one, and this is Circe. I am a super fan, a fanboy, a stan of the book Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. Song of Achilles is a reimagination of Greek mythology, kind of Trojan War sort of time, and Circe is the same kind of thing. And Circe is basically a character in Homer's Odyssey, where I'm pretty sure Odysseus visits her island, and what I love about this is that this is her story, this is her narrative. So Madeline Miller basically takes this kind of side character in Odysseus' narrative and makes a whole book out of it. What I loved about Song of Achilles was the writing style and how accessible the mythology was. Like, it didn't treat it as something you should already know coming into the book. Madeline Miller treated the book as a self-contained thing where she introduced every single character as a character, as if you'd never heard of them before. So, to conclude, without having even opened it yet, I think this is going to be chef kiss. The next one is the shortest book of the whole haul, and this is Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. And this is just about a woman who works in a convenience store and everyone's telling her to move on with her life and get a new job, and she's just quite happy and content. She's not going to let anyone take her away from her convenience store, and I have no idea where this is gonna go, but I desperately need to read it. This is a Japanese book, and I feel like Japanese authors have this really amazing ability to capture fascinating people, super introspective, super complicated. I love the way that Japanese authors see people's minds. So much empathy, I feel, must be woven into Japanese culture because all of these authors have that ability in their work. All the reviews in here say that it's quirky and witty, a dark and delightful novel which springs a feminist rallying cry. I just know I'm gonna read this all in one sitting and probably love it. Okay, next book is this one. This is Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reid, and I do have a confession. I maybe, potentially, possibly, started reading this book before filming the video because I couldn't wait, and I'm now 100 pages in, and it's great. It's so gripping. It's all about privilege and the nuances of different situations where sometimes there's no objectively like right or wrong person. Both people are complicated, the situation is messy, and you kind of view it from an objective perspective, where you as the reader have this opportunity to take a step back and view the situation and view the characters and understand mistakes that are made and prejudices that people may have. And it's stunning. The writing style is exquisite. It's one of those books where you forget you're actually reading, like you forget that there's a physical piece of paper in front of you and you are reading words. I don't know if that even makes sense, but it's so visual and vivid that I just feel like I'm there. I'm watching it all happening in my head while I'm reading it. So I can kind of already tell, unless there's like a monumental fuck up in the last few pages, this is going to be a 5-star recommendation from me. But I wanted to include this in the video because I'm loving it so far. Okay, next stack of books. Firstly, we have The Girl with the Louding Voice, and this is by Abi Dare. So this is set in a small Nigerian village, and it's about a 14-year-old called Aduni who is expected to fade into silence. And so I'm going to take a little stab in the dark based on the title and say that's probably not what happens. And everyone I know who has read this book said they just absolutely fell in love with the main character, and so I'm here for it. Sign me the hell up. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, her. Can we take a goddamn second to talk about that cover? She did what she needed to do, she came, she saw, and she bloody well conquered. I think that's one of my favorite book covers of all time. I just love it. So this is about someone who leaves Ireland for a badly paid job in Hong Kong. And I think it's just about this kind of rich cast of characters that they meet, and it says it's about money and love and cynicism, unspoken feelings, and unlikely connections. And in my head, I'm very much getting normal people sort of vibes, and that can only be a good thing. So I've wanted that for ages. I'm so pleased I finally have it. Now I just have to get on to actually reading the thing. Anyway, next book is this one. This is Burnt Sugar, and this is by Avni Doshi. Two things got me about this. Firstly, the fact that I saw it in a charity shop and it was reduced to £2.75, but secondly, because of the quote on the blurb. So the quote says, "Sometimes I refer to Ma in the past tense, even though she is still alive. I am grieving, but it's too early to burn the body." So it's about a woman and her relationship with her mum, and I think that feeling of mourning someone before they're actually gone because you kind of know that something is inevitable is one of the weirdest human emotions that makes no sense, but also is something that's so universal. And I cannot wait to see this author articulate all of the things we probably think in a very beautiful way. The next book is this one, Detransition Baby. And this is by trans author Tori Peters, and it's described as a uniquely trans take on love, motherhood, and those exes who you just can't quit. And you got me, I'm hooked. I think the vibe is two exes, one of them always wanted to be a mother but never was able to be, and then her ex gets someone else pregnant. So then it's about how these three characters sort of intermingle, and cannot wait. Now, the next one, I'm gonna be so superficial and say, I was really excited about this until I saw that cover. This just doesn't do it for me. This does not tickle my pickle. However, we're not gonna judge a book by its cover because Taylor Jenkins Reid is such a talented author. As you can see here, she's the author of Daisy Jones and the Six, but she's also the author of The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which is categorically one of the best books I've read in 2021 so far. So, Malibu Rising, even though it's its own limited story, it actually takes place in the same cinematic Taylor Jenkins Reid universe because characters who appear in her other books also appear briefly in this one. I've seen this described as like the ultimate beach summer read. It's set in August 1983 in Malibu. It's this annual end of summer party. Everyone who's anyone wants an invite to catch a glimpse of the famous Reaver siblings. But by midnight, the party will be completely out of control. By morning, the Reaver mansion will have gone up in flames. Oh hell! So this is about everything that happens before that first spark of the fire. Okay, I want to read it right now. If you kind of have that guilty pleasure for celebrity culture, you will love Taylor Jenkins Reid's books. They're so good. And I think she writes really, really beautifully, so I would recommend her work. Okay, this is the halfway point, and this is The Maidens. This is a dark academia book. And from what I'm reading, we've got Cambridge University, we've got a murder, we've got a secret society. It's like the ultimate amalgamation of every dark academia book, and I cannot wait to read it. Next we have Luster, and I think this is about a woman in her 20s having an affair with a married man in his 40s, and it's described as a razor-sharp, provocatively page-turning, and surprisingly tender book. A painfully funny debut about what it means to be young today. And I feel like writing about people in their 20s is something that authors find really difficult, so very much looking forward to seeing how this author does it, and this is Luster. Okay, next we have some more Japanese literature. As you might be able to tell, big fan of how Japanese authors write, but this one is called Before the Coffee Gets Cold, and when I tell you, this has been on my wish list for the longest time. The plot is people go to this coffee shop and they can time travel, but they can only stay sitting where they were sitting, and they can only have the amount of time until their coffee goes cold. And so it says people use that time to confront lovers who left them, receive a letter from their husband whose memory has begun to fade, see their sister one last time, and meet the daughter they never got the chance to know. So fascinating stuff. And I don't know, I think time travel is something that I wouldn't normally gravitate towards, but this sounds so enthralling and magical that I just had to have it. So now I do. Next we have Yoke, which is by Mary H.K. Choi. And I'm not gonna lie, I bought this knowing nothing about it, aside from the fact that my friend Noelle was very excited about this book. And it's all about two sisters called Jane and June, which I already know is going to be a problem for me because I have two brain cells and I don't know if they're going to be able to remember who is who. So I'm definitely going to have to read this when I'm not half asleep and it's not 4 AM like it currently is as I'm filming this clip. Yep, I have work at 9 AM. It's the self-sabotage for me. Anyways, on with the video. So it's about two sisters, Jane and June, who are born 3 years apart, and I think they were close when they were young, but they've drifted apart as they've grown old. So they're polar opposites, different ends of the spectrum, don't want anything to do with each other. But there's a twist, there's always a twist, because June gets diagnosed with cancer, and so Jane becomes the only person who can help her. Flung together by circumstance, housing woes, and family secrets, will the sisters learn more about each other than they're willing to confront? Well, do you know what? I'm gonna find out. Next up, we have Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng, and this is the same author who wrote Little Fires Everywhere. And it's about a Chinese-American family living in 1970s Ohio, and they have a favorite child called Lydia. You know where this is going, there's always a twist. Well, Lydia dies, and the delicate balancing act of this family kind of gets destroyed and they descend into chaos. A profoundly meaningful story of secrets and longing, which is both a gripping page-turner and a sensitive family portrait about love, lies, and race. Wow. I hope you can see why I bought all of these, because they just sound so good and I need them in my life. Here's some more. Next one has a corker of a title, and that is We Are All Birds of Uganda. And the reason I bought this is because this was the winner of the Murky Books New Writers Prize. And Murky Books was set up by Stormzy to help encourage diverse literature within the publishing industry, and I cannot wait to read this. So I think we've got 1960s Uganda and then present day London. Moving between two continents over a troubled century, We Are All Birds of Uganda is an immensely resonant novel that explores racial tensions, generational divides, and what it means to belong. So I think sometimes we can in fact judge a book by its cover because that looks stunning. I then have a book that I feel like everyone and their pet hamster has read before I've got round to it, and that is Where the Crawdads Sing. Yeah, I mean, over 5 million copies sold worldwide, which doesn't surprise me because I feel like every time I get on the London Underground, someone is reading this. And I want to be involved. I've actually started to become that person who speaks to people on the train about the book they're reading, and I feel like I'm kind of becoming a parody of myself, but I'm also so fine with it because I have some great conversations on the tube. But anyways, this is about a girl who lives in a marsh, but when someone called Chase is found dead, the locals immediately suspect the girl who lives in the marsh. But this girl is not what they say. She's sensitive and she's intelligent, and she has survived for years alone in the marsh that she calls home. And so it's kind of all about how people become intrigued by her wild sort of lifestyle and how she opens herself up to a new sort of life. And I need that in my life. Now these two are the only two non-fiction books I have in this pile. Firstly, we have Factfulness, and I've heard people rave about this. I've heard that the vibe is, this is all about how the world is actually a lot less bleak than we might think it is, and how easily misinformation spreads when there aren't actually facts to back up those claims. And honestly, if this promises to give me a bit of hope, after the last year that we have had, I will take it. On the other hand, we have this book. This is called Empireland, and this is all about how imperialism has shaped modern Britain. So it's all about the very particular type of racism that you find in the UK, and how our colonial past has completely shaped that. And so for me, this is a complete must read. And also very up to date. It covers Brexit, it covers the beginning of the pandemic, so definitely need to get around to that. ASAP Rocky. Okay, the final book that I actually have a physical copy of is this one, and this is called All My Puny Sorrows. And this is also about two kind of polar opposite sisters. One of them is glamorous, quite famous, happily married, and she's a world-renowned pianist. And then her sister is divorced, broke, and sleeping with the wrong men, apparently. But the kind of ostensibly happier and more successful pianist sibling who's about to go on a world tour is having a mental health crisis. And I think this book is all about the heartbreaking and incredibly complicated situation where someone you love decides that they don't want to live anymore. And it's about how you deal with that and how you discuss that and how you acknowledge that that's the way they feel. And so I don't know about you, but I need to read that. And so these are all the books that I have bought, but I'm also going to run through the 5 other books which I couldn't find when I was out shopping. First one, One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston, the same author who wrote Red, White and Royal Blue. Here's one I made earlier. And Red, White and Royal Blue is such a joyous triumph. It's so heartwarming and lovely. And I just need a bit more of that in my life. I don't know anything really about One Last Stop aside from that it's a sapphic romance, but I feel like everyone's gonna be talking about it, and so I need to read that thing. Next one is Transcendent Kingdom by Yajiasi, which I read her book Homegoing, and it was phenomenal. So great, covers so much ground. Transcendent Kingdom is an absolute must read for me because I think she's great. Next one is Maybe You Should Talk to Someone, and I think this is all about therapy but written by a therapist. Then we have The Death of Vivek Oji, which I've just heard amazing things about the way that it's written. And finally Severance, which is actually about a fictional pandemic. And I don't really know if I do want to read a book about a pandemic right now while we're still living through one, but it's like a fungal thing which I feel like is different enough to COVID not to be just completely depressing depressing. But again, I've heard incredible things about Ling Ma and her writing style, so yeah, would really love to read Severance as well. Okay, I'm exhausted just thinking about this and all of the reading that I'm gonna be doing. But thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that it's introduced you to a book that you may love. In the meantime, I will be your guinea pig and I will let you know what I think about these books as I read them. So if you are new here, you can press subscribe and hear about what my thoughts are on these books as and when I hopefully eventually get around to all of them. An enormous shout out to OnePlus Nord for making this video happen and sponsoring it. Thank you so much. And all of the information to win one of these funky phones will be down below. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you next time. Bye bye.